What's up everyone, how's it going? This is Watch, and in this video we'll be doing a head-to-head specification comparison between the brand new Samsung Galaxy S6 that officially got announced and the Apple iPhone 6. Now, we're definitely going to do a full-on hands-on comparison once we have the Samsung Galaxy S6 on our hands sometime around April when it releases. But in this video we're doing a direct head-to-head specification comparison between the iPhone 6 and the GS6 because I think these two phones are going to probably be one of the most popular phones throughout the year of 2015. So if you're interested in that, let's get right into the comparison differences. Now, physically speaking, the Galaxy S6 will have a slightly larger footprint than the iPhone 6 because it has the larger overall screen size, but not by much. There's not going to be a massive difference between the two in terms of size. What's really impressive about the new Samsung phone is its thickness. It's pretty much identical to the iPhone 6 at 6.8 millimeters versus about 6.9 millimeters on the iPhone 6. So that's extremely impressive because one of the big things about the new GS6 is its overall design improvement. It now has a full metal chassis that goes all around the phone. It actually has a chamfered side that looks very well made and is going to provide adequate grip of the phone. Interestingly, the Samsung Galaxy S5 has a glass front and back. It's using Gorilla Glass 4 technology, so it should be pretty good in terms of overall durability and scratch resistance, but it's certainly going to be a fingerprint magnet and it's going to provide a fairly shiny finish on the back of the phone. Now, probably one of the most interesting things from a comparison standpoint is now the build quality on the Samsung Galaxy S lineup of products is up there with what you would find with Apple iPhone products, and that's really exciting to see. Samsung is certainly stepping up their game and trying to really compete in the high-end smartphone market. Now, moving on to the displays of these two smartphones, one thing is for sure that the new Samsung Galaxy S6 is going to have an absolutely brilliant display. It's going to be 5.1 inches in terms of dimensions, which is a little bit bigger than the 4.7-inch display we have on the standard iPhone 6, and in terms of resolution, it's going to be Quad HD 2560 by 1440, and we're going to have a very impressive PPI count of about 577 versus the 326 PPI count we have on the fairly low resolution iPhone 6. Now, in terms of display tech, we're using Super AMOLED OLED technology on the Samsung Galaxy S6, and for the first time, Samsung is going to really pump up the brightness on their displays, so you're going to have a really vibrant and bright screen in any lighting circumstance, which is going to be great because the iPhone 6 is actually really good in an outdoor environment. Now, both smartphones will have a fingerprint scanner, but unlike last year's GS5 where you had to swipe to unlock the phone or to access the fingerprint scanner, you only need to place your finger or thumb right on top of the home button, much in the same way you do on the Touch ID system on the Apple iPhone. So that's going to be definitely a big improvement because that swipe system didn't really work for me at all. And we'll see how it does in real life and see how it compares against the Touch ID system on the iPhone. Now, moving on and taking a look at the internal specifications between these two, the new GS6 is going to have an Exynos 7420, which is an 8-core processor comprised of 2 quad cores. One is clocked at about 1.5 gigahertz, the other one clocked at about 2.1 gigahertz, and basically this is going to be the processor for the world market. Most of the phones around the world are going to ship with this processor. We're still unsure of what's going to ship in terms of North American markets. Perhaps they'll use a Qualcomm chip. That's uncertain at this point, but as it stands, this new Exynos processor is going to be quite a lot faster than the last generation GS5, and it's going to be quite comparable to the overall performance we're going to get with the Apple A8 that's in the iPhone 6 and 6 Plus. Now, one thing is going to be sure, in terms of single core threaded applications, I think the Apple A8 will still be faster, but when it comes to the overall multi-processing capabilities, I think with all those cores on the Exynos processor, it's going to be overall faster. But again, we're going to have to test these phones in real life. In most cases, I think both phones are going to be very fast and very adequate for pretty much everybody out there. Now, in terms of RAM, we have 3 gigabytes of RAM on the GS6, and we have a 1 gigabyte of RAM on the iPhone, and certainly with the improved multitasking capabilities on the new GS6 is going to be a beast when it comes to multitasking capabilities. Now, in terms of internal memory options, basically, for the first time ever, the new GS6 will not have any user expandable memory, no micro SD expansion slot, so you're going to have to choose between the 32, 64, and 128 gigabyte model to see which one best fits your needs. And the same thing goes for the iPhone 6, where basically you have no expandable memory, so you'll have to choose between the 16, 64, and 128 gigabyte models. Now, continuing forward, let's talk about the cameras that comes inside these two smartphones. Now, the front-facing camera on the new GS6 6 will be quite impressive. 5 megapixel stills, 1080p video, certainly a huge advantage compared to the 1.2 megapixel stills and 720p video we have on the iPhone 6. And in terms of the rear-facing camera, both phones will have protruding rear-facing cameras, which is kind of annoying. Unfortunately, we're not at to that phase where we can have thin smartphones as well as thin cameras. But in terms of the sensor, the GS6 has a very similar sensor to what we find on the Note 4, as well as last year's model, basically a 16 megapixel, but we have improved optics. It has a brand new f1.8 maximum aperture that's going to be excellent for low light and giving you a little bit of shallow depth of field as much as you can with the small sensor, and it has optical stabilization, so it's going to be pretty good in terms of low light condition, and with that optical stabilization system, it's going to give you as much versatility as possible. Unfortunately, the iPhone 6, even though it has a fantastic 8 megapixel camera, we don't have optical stabilization in this model. You'll have to step it up to the iPhone 6 Plus, but overall, I think the stills capabilities on both of these two are going to be fantastic and very usable for web distribution. But again, when we get the new GS6 on our hands, we'll definitely have to see how in reality the camera compares against the iPhone in terms of low light scenarios and things like that. In terms of video, we have 4K at 30 frames per second, as you would expect on the Samsung. We also have 720p 128 frames per second video, and we have 240 frames per second 720p video on the iPhone 6, which is one of the best slow motion capabilities on any smartphone, and we have 1080p video at 30 frames per second, which is certainly adequate for most users out there. Now, furthermore, the GS6 does have a new autofocusing system, so you should have faster overall speed in terms of taking photos, which is going to be interesting in real life. We'll see how it compares against the kind of phase detection mode you have on the iPhone 6, which is very fast in terms of autofocusing and taking pictures. Now, the last thing that we're going to talk about is overall battery life of these two smartphones. Now, since we don't have the GS6 in hand and we can't really test out how long it lasts on a single charge once it's broken in and after days of use, but in terms of overall battery capacity, it's using a 2550 milliamp hour battery, which is certainly larger than the 1810 milliamp hour battery we have on the standard iPhone 6, but in both cases, they are non-user replaceable. So that means you can't open up the back of the phone and access the battery, which is certainly going to be a bummer for a lot of you guys out there that like that feature. But on the plus side, we basically have wireless charging support for both Qi and PMA wireless charging standard, which is quite fantastic. We also have fast charging mode, the similar technology that we saw on the Note 4, so you can easily get 50% of the battery within 30 or 25 minutes as long as you're using the high voltage charger that comes with the phone. Now, one of the factors about the GS6 is that it does have that Quad HD display, which certainly typically uses more battery life than a 1080p display that we found on last year's phone. But in order to combat that issue, we basically have the more power efficient Exynos processor, which should help in getting more juice throughout the day. Couple that with some power saving modes on the software end, and we should have a pretty comparable phone when it comes to battery life that will be certainly comparable to the iPhone 6. But again, we'll have to test it out, break it in for a couple of days, and see how much we get on a single charge. But on that, guys, that's really it. Make sure to leave a comment down below on which phone you think has the most to offer for your personal needs. Definitely love to hear all your thoughts and opinions. Make sure to give us a thumbs up if you like this comparison. Again, stay tuned for our full hands-on comparison. We'll have that as soon as we get our hands on the Samsung Galaxy S6. I've also done a comparison against the new HTC One M9 versus the GS6, which again are going to be probably two of the most popular Android smartphones of this year. So definitely check out that video if you haven't already. Thanks so much again for watching. We'll see you later. Take care.